Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. Gonna be diving into this article about the future of cars that you sent over. Yeah, it's got some really interesting stuff. And I know you're not just interested in like, what's the flashy new thing, but like really what's gonna be like the groundbreaking stuff here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
Some really thought-provoking ideas in this article.
for sure. So, one of the things I thought was really interesting, and I know you're ahead of the curve on this one, right? You've got your EV. But this whole thing about solid state batteries,
Right.
that seems to be like, okay, if electric cars are the next step, this is the next step after that. You
Totally.
know?
Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up in the incremental improvements, right? Like, oh, it's slightly better battery, it charges a little bit faster. But this is really like a completely different beast
Yeah.
when you talk about solid state.
And this article even talks about how much safer they'll be too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Huge implications there. Yeah, you had mentioned some concerns about, EV fires and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, safety is obviously paramount,
Right.
especially as we move towards, more autonomous systems and things like that. You don't want to be, uh, safety is, you can't overstate the importance of safety.
Right.
And I think this solid state technology really has the potential to address a lot of those concerns.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so then the next thing, I don't even know what to make of this. In-wheel motors. Like what?
It's a wild concept, isn't it?
It's like, so we're not even going to have engines under the hood anymore.
It's really rethinking the whole architecture of the car, right?
Totally.
Because if you have these motors in each wheel, suddenly you have so much more space.
Right.
You can make the car lower, sleeker, all sorts of design possibilities open up.
And then even thinking about the article, they were talking about how this could affect like handling and efficiency.
Absolutely.
And like,
Yeah, you can have like torque vectoring on a whole other level because each wheel can adjust its power and braking independently.
yeah,
So you could have like incredible handling, quicker acceleration, potentially even entirely new suspension systems that we haven't even like thought of yet because of this technology.
it's like they're saying, oh, okay, we're going to reinvent the wheel.
Literally.
Like literally that's what they're doing. Okay. So this next one, I mean, are we even ready for this? Flying cars.
I know, right? It sounds like something out of the Jetsons.
It does.
But, the article makes a really interesting point about, it's not just about flying cars. It's about vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, right?
Right.
VTLs.
So we don't need like a runway and all
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
We're just talking about like up and over everything.
Yeah. Imagine like, your commute. You're just like up and over all the traffic. I mean, there
Yeah.
are definitely challenges, right? Like air traffic control, safety, all of that. But there are companies actively working on this.
Wow.
It's not just science fiction anymore.
I mean, it sounds great in theory, but I don't know if I'm ready to be like in the air with everybody else. Like, what if I get a flat tire up there?
That's a good question for the engineers.
Right.
Yeah, there are definitely kinks to work out, but yeah, it's an exciting area to watch for sure.
It is exciting. It is exciting. Um, okay, so let's talk about, we're talking about flying cars, but some of us like to keep our feet on the ground. What about just the inside of the car? Like, how is that changing?
The car cabin.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an area where I think we're going to see some really interesting developments, especially as we move towards self-driving cars.
Okay.
Because you think about it, if you're not driving, the interior of the car becomes a completely different space.
Right. It's not about the driver anymore.
Exactly.
It's about the experience.
Exactly. It becomes more like a mobile living room or a mobile office or even like a social space.
Right.
So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in terms of like, comfort, entertainment, productivity, all those sorts of things.
Yeah. So, like, are we talking like, crazy sound systems and like
Oh, for sure. Advanced ergonomics, customizable lighting, temperature controls, even augmented reality displays. Imagine like, you know,
augmented reality, like in the car?
yeah, like a heads-up display that projects navigation onto the windshield, or even like virtual windows that give you panoramic views, even if you're stuck in traffic.
So it's like we're taking our digital lives and we're bringing them into the car, but in a way that like enhances the experience instead of distracting from it, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so I mean, this is all great, but it does kind of hinge on us actually getting self-driving cars, right?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And the article does a good job of, acknowledging that there are still challenges to overcome.
Okay.
Safety being the biggest one, right?
Right.
We need to make sure that these cars can navigate complex environments, make split-second decisions, and, interact safely with human drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, all of that.
It's a lot of responsibility to put on a computer.
Yeah, it's a tall order.
Okay, so let's say they figure all that out. What about, like, the ethics of it? Like, who's responsible if something happens, you know?
Ah, that's the other big question, right? The ethical considerations.
Right, like, how do you program a car to make moral decisions?
It's a really interesting philosophical debate, and I think it's one that we need to be having now, right?
Yeah.
Not down the road when it's too late.
Yeah, we're basically, like, handing over control, you know,
In a way,
to
yeah.
these machines.
Yeah, it's a big step.
It is a big step. But, you know, thinking about it, I mean, there are a lot of benefits too, right? I mean, obviously, like, the environmental impact,
Oh, I know.
that's huge, right?
I mean, electric vehicles alone are already making a big difference.
Right.
But when you combine that with, potentially more efficient transportation systems overall,
Right.
we could be talking about a significant reduction in our reliance on fossil fuels
Wow.
and, cleaner air, quieter streets, a smaller carbon footprint, all of that.
Okay, so that's like the bigger picture. But what about the cars themselves? Like, are we talking about like building them
Oh,
differently?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The article talks about, using recycled and recyclable materials,
Okay.
exploring alternative fuel sources like hydrogen,
Interesting.
even rethinking like the entire life cycle of a vehicle,
Okay.
to minimize its environmental impact from start to finish.
Wow. So it's not just about making them smarter, it's about making them like more sustainable from the ground up.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that. But I mean, that's a lot of change, right? What does that mean for like the auto industry as we know it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, the article hints at this, that there's going to be some disruption.
Okay.
Right. I mean, traditional automakers are going to have to adapt and innovate to stay competitive.
Right.
And at the same time, you have all these new players, especially in the tech sector, who are, coming in with fresh ideas and, a lot of capital.
Right.
So it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're on the cusp of like a major, major shift.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just in how we get around, but like the entire automotive landscape.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as with any major shift, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be opportunities.
That's for sure.
But I think the key is to approach it with, a spirit of collaboration, innovation,
Right.
and a commitment to, creating a future that works for everyone.
I like that.
Yeah.
A future that works for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this has been like eye-opening.
It's exciting stuff to think about.
It is. It really
It's
is.
not every day you get to like really delve into the future of transportation like this. So
No, it's not. It's not. It's pretty cool. And I think there's a lot here that, we'll probably be talking about for years to come.
Oh, absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg, I think.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's not even just, like you were saying about personal transportation. So, right. Think about like deliveries and stuff. Expert speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all the stuff that we get delivered now.
Oh, right. Like Amazon.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So like all of that could be, even more efficient,
Interesting.
less congestion on the roads. Yeah, it could be a whole different ball game.
Wow. Okay, so that's like the flying car future. But let's say, like what about those of us who are fine on the ground? Like what's coming down the pike for the actual inside of the car? You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Like how's that going to change?
Oh, the car cabin itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I think things get really interesting, particularly as we move towards, higher levels of autonomy.
Okay.
Because think about it, right? If you don't have to focus on driving,
Right.
the interior of the car becomes something totally different.
Yeah, it's not about like the driver's seat and all that. It's like
Exactly. It's not about like the ergonomics of driving anymore. It's about like how do we make this space as comfortable, as entertaining, as productive, whatever you want it to be.
it's like your living room on wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Or your office on
Right.
wheels. Some people are even talking about like, social spaces on wheels, where you can have meetings.
What? Like in your car?
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Right.
If you're not driving,
I guess, yeah.
the car becomes a much more flexible space.
Okay, so like what's that gonna look like? Like are we talking like, crazy sound systems and like, I don't know.
Oh, think like, advanced ergonomics, customizable lighting, temperature controls, even like,
Okay.
augmented reality display.
Augmented reality,
Right.
like in the car.
Yeah. Imagine like a heads-up display that's projecting navigation information onto the windshield. Or even like virtual windows that give you like these panoramic views, even if you're, stuck in traffic.
So it's like we're taking all the stuff that we have on our phones and our computers and we're like putting it into the car, but in a way that, like, I don't know, like enhances the experience instead of like distracting from it.
Exactly. It's about integrating technology in a way that's seamless and intuitive.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, I'm kind of over screens, you know?
Right, right. It's not about adding more screens. It's about using technology in a way that's actually beneficial.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, all of this, it kind of hinges on us actually getting to like self-driving cars, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the big question mark, isn't it?
Right,
Like, how quickly can we make this technology safe and reliable?
right.
Because, the article does a good job of sort of like highlighting the challenges there.
Okay,
I mean, safety being the biggest one, right? We need to be able to trust these systems to make split-second decisions.
right, like a human.
Exactly. And to navigate complex environments, interact with pedestrians, cyclists, other drivers, all of that.
I mean, I feel like driving is so stressful. Like, I almost feel like a computer could do it better, but at the same time, it's like, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It's a huge amount of responsibility to hand over to a computer system.
Okay, so let's say, like, they figure all that out, right? What about just like the ethical implications of it? Like, who's responsible if something happens?
Right, right. That's the other big question.
Right, like if the car makes a mistake.
Yeah, like how do you program a car to make moral decisions,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like those classic philosophical trolley problems, you
Well,
know?
right, right, exactly.
It's something that we as a society need to be thinking about now, not
Yeah.
down the line when it's too late.
Yeah, because we're basically like handing over control, you know?
In a way, yeah, it's a big step.
It is a big step to be like, all right, computer, you got this, you know?
Yeah, it requires a certain level of trust in the technology for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild to think about like how fast things are changing.
It really is. It's amazing to see how quickly these technologies are developing.
Yeah, like I remember, I don't know, maybe it was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we were talking about this stuff and it was like, oh, someday.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, it's right around the corner.
It's true. The pace of innovation is incredible.
It really is.
And I think it speaks to, human ingenuity, right?
Right.
Like when we set our minds to something,
Right.
we could accomplish amazing things.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, like, what's next, you know? What haven't we even thought of yet?
That's the exciting part, isn't it? The possibilities are endless.
It really is. It really is. But I mean, it's not just about like inventing the future, right? It's about shaping it. Like we have to be intentional about the kind of future we want to create.
100%. And that's why these conversations are so important.
Right?
Because we need to be thinking about not just the can we, but the should we, right?
Right, exactly.
Like just because we can build something doesn't necessarily mean we should.
Right. It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And that kind of brings me to this whole idea of the smart city, right? Like this article talks about, this future where everything is connected, everything is data driven, and transportation is like a huge part of that.
Absolutely. I mean, transportation is really the lifeblood of a city, right?
Yeah.
So if we can make transportation more efficient, more sustainable, it has a ripple effect on everything else.
So, like, paint me a picture. What does a smart city look like in terms of like how people get around?
Well, imagine a city where traffic flows smoothly, right?
Yeah.
No more gridlock,
Okay, I like where this is going.
where public transportation is seamlessly integrated with ride-sharing services.
Okay.
And, where pedestrians, cyclists, and autonomous vehicles can all coexist safely and efficiently.
Okay, so it's like everyone's working together.
Exactly. It's about creating a more holistic and integrated transportation ecosystem.
Okay, but how do we get there? Like, what's the key?
Well, I think a big part of it is data, right? Using sensors and data analysis to optimize everything from traffic light timing to parking availability
Oh.
to, even predicting and preventing accidents before they happen.
So it's like the city's kind of like thinking ahead.
Exactly. It's about creating a more intelligent and responsive urban environment.
I mean, it sounds great in theory, but I also, like, I don't know, I think about data privacy and all that. Like, is that a concern?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's
Sure.
one of the big challenges, right? As we become more reliant on data,
Mm-hmm.
we have to be very mindful of how that data is being collected, how it's being used,
Right.
who has access to
It's
it.
like Big Brother and all that.
Exactly. So I think transparency and public engagement are going to be absolutely crucial
Okay.
in terms of, building trust and making sure that these technologies are being used responsibly.
So it's like a balancing act, right?
It is. It's about finding that balance between innovation and, protecting our rights and our privacy.
Right, right, for sure. Man, this has been like This whole conversation has been so mind-expanding. Like, it makes you think about the future in a whole different way.
It really does. And I think that's the power of these kinds of discussions, right?
Yeah.
To kind of like step outside of our day-to-day and really imagine what's possible.
Yeah, because it's easy to get caught up in, like, the day-to-day grind and forget to, like, look up and be like, whoa, where are we going?
100%.
Right.
We need to make time for that.
We do, for sure. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to, like, dive into this with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
And to everyone listening, thanks for, coming along for the ride. This has been,
It's been a journey.
it has been a journey.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.